I am fine. Uh-huh, Max said. See, I want to believe that, but you're standing like someone just challenged you to a duel, and you're waiting for them to draw their weapon. Zyra tilted her head slightly. That is the correct stance for such a situation, Max groaned, running a hand down his face. Lady, we are on a cargo ship, not a gladiator pit. Many cargo ships are attacked frequently. Not this one. Zyra raised a single brow. Okay, fine, not this one in the last month, Max admitted. But still, you can at least pretend to be at ease. Zyra stared at him for a long moment. Then, very deliberately, she lowered her arms and sat down on the nearest chair with the kind of precision that suggested she was doing it more as an experiment than out of actual comfort. Max folded his arms. There, was that so hard? Zyra didn't answer. Instead, she scanned the room again before asking, Why does your ship appear damaged? Max scowled. Hey, Rude, the lucky break is in perfectly acceptable condition. Zyra reached out and pressed a single finger against the edge of the table. It immediately wobbled, making a sad creaking sound. Max coughed. Okay, mostly acceptable condition. Before Zyra could comment further, the ship's comms crackled to life. Carter, we've got a problem. Max winced and tapped his earpiece. Relo, when don't we have a problem? Spare me the sarcasm. We've got an unidentified vessel tailing us. It's not hailing, not broadcasting an ID, and it's keeping just outside our scanner range. Either we picked up a secret admirer, or we're about to have a very bad day. Zyra was already standing before Max could respond. Her demeanor shifted instantly, the tension in the room sharpening like a blade being drawn. Show me. Max sighed. Oh, now you want to be involved. Still, he didn't argue. He led her to the bridge where Relo was seated in the captain's chair, arms crossed as she stared at the radar screen with the kind of expression that suggested she was actively resisting the urge to throw something. Max leaned over the console. Huh, that's not ominous at all. A single blip hovered at the edge of their long-range scanners, mirroring their movements perfectly. Not attacking, not signaling, just watching. Zyra studied the screen with narrowed eyes. It is waiting for something. Yeah, that's what worries me, Relo muttered. I don't like shadows playing coy. Max drummed his fingers on the console. So, what's the plan? We keep flying and hope they get bored? Zyra shook her head. Number, they are tracking me. Relo gave her a sharp look. You sure about that? Zyra's expression didn't waver. Yes, Max exhaled. Well, great. You've got a fan club and now they're stalking my ship, he turned to Relo. We could try losing them, cut the engine's drift, see if they overcorrect and expose themselves. Relo considered it. Risky but doable. She glanced at Zyra. You got any insights? Oh, great and terrifying one? Zyra seemed unbothered by the sarcasm. They are cautious. If they intend an attack, they will wait until we reach a more isolated location. They may be avoiding station patrols. Relo grimaced. Which means the second we leave this trade lane, they'll pounce. Max sighed, already regretting everything. Cool, fantastic. Love that for us. Then, as if the universe wanted to spite him, the proximity alarm blared. The unidentified vessel was moving, fast. Relo cursed. They're closing in, shields up. Max barely had time to grip the edge of the console before the ship lurched, a violent impact rocking the lucky break. The lights flickered, the overhead speakers crackling as the AI system warbled, structural integrity at 92%. Moderate hull damage sustained. Max gritted his teeth. All right, that was unnecessary. Zyra was already moving. Weapons? Relo grunted. You see the shape this ship's in? We've got one turret and a targeting system that only works when it feels like it. Max waved his arms. Hey, don't insult my ship while we're in a life-threatening situation. Another impact rocked the hull. Sparks flew from the main console as Relo swore under her breath. Zyra exhaled, then turned toward the airlock. Max's stomach dropped. Where are you going? Zyra didn't look back. To end this. Relo's eyes widened. Wait, are you seriously about to... Too late. The ship lurched again, and in a blur of motion, Zyra was gone, moving with impossible speed as she made her way toward the external airlock. Max and Relo shared a look. Max groaned. Why do I have a bad feeling about this? Relo sighed. Because you have a working brain. Max threw his hands up. That's debatable at this point. And with that, they both ran after her, straight into whatever madness Zira had just decided was the solution to their very, very bad day. Max had long since accepted that he wasn't the bravest person in the galaxy. He was the kind of guy who firmly believed that running away from a problem was often the best solution. And yet, for reasons he was still trying to comprehend, he now found himself sprinting after Zira, who had just decided that launching herself into space was a perfectly reasonable response to being attacked. He skidded into the airlock chamber, nearly colliding with the bulkhead as Relo cursed beside him. She actually did it, Relo growled. She actually just... Max pressed against the observation port, eyes wide as he watched Zira shoot out into the black void of space like some kind of warrior goddess who had completely abandoned the need for basic survival instincts. She wasn't even wearing a proper spacesuit, just her usual armored gear, though some kind of shimmering energy field now surrounded her body. Max had no idea what kind of tech it was, but considering she wasn't instantly freezing to death or suffocating, it had to be working. Okay, that's both the most terrifying and coolest thing I've ever seen, Max admitted. Relo didn't seem nearly as impressed. You absolute idiot, she muttered, hitting the comms. Zira, in case you missed it, space is big and dangerous. Care to explain what exactly your plan is before you get yourself killed? A moment of silence. Then Zira's voice came through the speakers, perfectly calm. I am going to board their ship. Max and Relo exchanged looks. Max cleared his throat. You mean that ship? He pointed at the enemy vessel, which was significantly larger than the Lucky Break and bristling with weapons. Yes, Relo pinched the bridge of her nose. All right, I'm done. She's insane. I'm officially saying it. Max threw up his hands. Oh, now you're saying it? Took you long enough? Out in space, Zira was already in motion. She kicked off a piece of floating debris, propelling herself toward the enemy ship with alarming speed. The energy field around her shimmered, adjusting to the microgravity as she angled herself like a guided missile. Max couldn't stop staring. I feel like this is the part where we should be helping, but I genuinely have no idea how. Relo grumbled. Yeah, well, unless you've got some secret anti-gravity combat gear, we're stuck watching her pull off whatever ridiculous stunt she's got planned. As if to emphasize the point, Zira reached the enemy ship and latched onto the hull, with the kind of strength that should not have been possible. The cameras on the Lucky Break zoomed in just in time to show her punching the outer airlock controls, because of course she did, and forcing the doors open. The feed cut out. Max's stomach twisted. I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Relo exhaled. Why not both? Inside the enemy vessel, Zira moved like a ghost. The moment she breached the airlock, the emergency systems tried to compensate, sealing the breach, stabilizing the oxygen levels, but the chaos she introduced was already spreading. Footsteps pounded down the corridors, shouted voices filled the ship as panicked mercenaries rushed toward the disturbance. Zira didn't wait for them to organize. She moved, slipping through the dimly lit hallways with the precision of a predator. The first mercenary she encountered barely had time to react before she grabbed him by the collar, slammed him into the bulkhead, and knocked him unconscious with a single strike. The second one actually managed to raise his weapon, right before Zira yanked it from his hands, flipped it around, and shot him in the leg. He crumpled with a yelp. By the time the third mercenary arrived, Zira was already moving again, disappearing deeper into the ship. She needed to find the bridge. Whoever was hunting her had been waiting for the right opportunity to strike. They had anticipated her movements, tracking her from Orion Station. That meant they had information, perhaps even a client. And if there was one thing Zira knew about bounty hunters, it was that they never worked without a price. She intended to find out exactly who wanted her dead. Meanwhile, back on the Lucky Break, Max was stressing. Okay, think, he muttered, pacing back and forth. How do we not die horribly when our resident murder elf inevitably blows something up? Relo leaned against the console. Best bet, we get ready to move the moment she needs an exit. Max threw his arms up. And how exactly do we know when that is? As if on cue, the comms crackled to life. Zira's voice came through, ever so slightly out of breath. I need extraction. Max blinked. Wow, that was fast. Rilo was already flipping switches. Where's your location? Bridge, Zira replied. It is, occupied. Max frowned. Occupied as in you're winning, or occupied as in we're about to have a really bad time? A pause. Then Zira's voice, ever so casual. A bit of both, Rilo cursed. All right, strap in. We're making a move. Max scrambled to his seat, strapping in just as the ship lurched forward. The lucky break was not built for combat maneuvers, but Rilo flew it like she wished it was. The engines roared, thrusters firing at maximum as the ship closed in on the enemy vessel. Deploying docking clamps, Rilo announced, fingers flying across the controls. Carter, get ready to open the hatch. Max hurried toward the airlock, fingers hovering over the release switch. Okay, Zira, you better be right there because we are not sticking around for... A loud bang interrupted him. The airlock door dented outward. Max's brain barely had time to process that before it happened again. Another massive impact, metal groaning under the force. Then, on the third strike, the door exploded inward, and Zira landed in the entryway, breathing hard. Her armor was scuffed. She had what appeared to be scorch marks on her shoulder, and she was grinning. Max stared. Zira exhaled. Go. Max slammed the button. The doors sealed shut just as the ship peeled away, leaving the mercenaries scrambling in confusion. Rilo wasted no time. Strap in, people! We are leaving! The lucky brake shook as the engines burned hot, propelling them away at full speed. Within moments, they were in open space again, free and clear. Max finally let out the breath he'd been holding. Okay, that was... something. Zira turned to him, expression unreadable. Then she clapped him on the shoulder. You are useful. Max blinked, then grinned. I knew I'd win you over eventually. Zira simply walked past him. You still talk too much. Rilo laughed. He really does. Max sighed. You people have no appreciation for comedic genius. And just like that, their latest disaster came to an end, leaving Max with one undeniable truth. His life had officially gotten way more complicated. Max had officially decided that his life had gone from mildly chaotic to on the verge of catastrophic in record time. This realization came to him as he stood in the cockpit of the Lucky Break, staring at a holographic display of the ship's fuel reserves, which were now dangerously low. All right, he said, rubbing his temples. Let's go over the list of problems we currently have. Rilo, seated at the helm, didn't look up. Oh, this should be fun. Max took a deep breath. 1, we barely escaped a mercenary warship with our lives. 2, our ship is running on fumes, and we definitely don't have enough credits to refuel. 3, we just picked a fight with people who really want Zira dead, which means we probably have a bounty on our heads now. Rilo nodded. Sounds about right? Max threw up his hands. And yet somehow, the biggest problem we have is that Zira refuses to tell us why she's being hunted in the first place. At that moment, Zira, who had been silently leaning against the bulkhead, arms crossed, tilted her head. It is complicated, she said simply. Max turned to her, exasperated. Complicated? Zira, everything about you is complicated. You're an unkillable alien warrior with a galaxy-wide reputation for being terrifying. We just nearly got blown up because of you. I feel like we deserve an explanation. Zira remained frustratingly unreadable. You are not owed anything, human. Max groaned. Oh, great. We're back to that again. Rilo sighed, finally spinning her chair to face them. Look, we don't need your whole life story, Zira. But if people are chasing us now, we need to know who we're running from. For a long moment, Zira was silent. Then, finally, she exhaled and spoke. They were syndicate mercenaries. Max blinked. The syndicate? Zira gave him a flat look. No, the other syndicate that hunts people for sport. Max turned to Rilo. Oh, great, so we're dealing with a galactic crime empire. That's fantastic. Super. Why not just add a killer AI and a time-traveling assassin while we're at it? Zira ignored his dramatics. They have been searching for me for some time. I expected them to find me eventually. Rilo frowned. Why? What did you do to tick them off? Zira's jaw tightened. I refuse to work for them. Max blinked. That's it? That's all it takes to get on their hit list? They do not take rejection well. Max let out a low whistle. Yikes. Guess they've got some serious abandonment issues. Relo frowned. So, what do they want from you? Zaira hesitated. That alone sent up several warning flags. Finally, she answered. I was valuable to them. Max narrowed his eyes. Valuable how? Zaira didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze to the holographic display as if lost in thought. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower than usual. I was created for war, she said. A weapon designed to be stronger, faster, and more durable than anything else. The Syndicate wanted to own me. Max felt a chill crawl up his spine. Zaira always had an air of mystery about her, but this was different. Relo exhaled. Well, that explains a lot. Max rubbed his face. Yeah, it does. Zaira's expression didn't change. I will not be owned. Max looked at her then, really looked at her. The tension in her shoulders, the guarded edge in her voice, the way she stood, always prepared to fight, always expecting a battle. For the first time he saw past the legend, past the terrifying warrior. Zaira wasn't just running from the Syndicate, she was running from the life they had tried to force on her. He sighed. Okay, so, plan A. We keep running until we figure something out. Rilo groaned. And when we inevitably run out of fuel? Max grinned. We go with plan B. Zaira raised an eyebrow. And plan B is... Max clapped his hands together. Find the shadiest fueling station we can and swindle our way into a free refill. Relo buried her face in her hands. Oh, for the love of... Zaira actually smirked. I like this plan. Max grinned. See? She gets it. Relo muttered something under her breath about idiots and death wishes before punching in new coordinates. Max leaned back in his seat, exhaling. Things were getting way more dangerous, but for some reason he wasn't afraid. Maybe, just maybe. He trusted Zaira to get them through this. Max had always considered himself a simple man with simple dreams. Haul cargo, avoid trouble, and definitely never make enemies with a galactic crime syndicate. And yet, here he was, sprinting down a dimly lit corridor inside a heavily armed Syndicate warship, dodging plasma fire, while Zaira carved through mercenaries like they were made of paper. So, you know. Another Tuesday. I just want to state, Max panted as he ducked behind a crate, for the record, that this plan is terrible. Zaira, standing completely unbothered in the open, deflected a blaster shot with the flat of her hand before yanking a rifle from an enemy's grip and knocking him unconscious with it. You suggested this plan. Max threw up his hands. Yeah, but I meant it sarcastically. You were the one who thought, oh yes, let's infiltrate a Syndicate battleship and dismantle their entire operation from the inside. Relo's voice crackled over the comms. Less arguing, more surviving, please. Zaira barely spared Max a glance before kicking open a security door and striding inside. Keep up, human, Max groaned but followed, muttering under his breath. Oh sure, let's all just keep up with a 7-foot-tall alien death goddess who doesn't even sweat. Inside the command center, alarms blared, red warning lights casting ominous shadows. Holographic screens flickered with status reports, detailing the Lucky Break still docked outside, its engines primed for an emergency getaway. Max glanced at the security monitors, just in time to see way too many Syndicate guards heading their way. A slight problem, he said. We've got company, and by company, I mean an entire angry mob with guns. Zaira didn't react. She was already focused on the control panel, fingers flying across the interface as she rewrote the ship's command protocols. Relo's voice crackled through the comms again. Zaira, please tell me you're almost done overriding their systems. Zaira's long ears twitched. Almost, Max swallowed. Define almost? A loud boom shook the ship. Relo's tone was very displeased. What the hell was that? Zaira continued typing. I disabled their weapons. It overloaded the core regulators. Max's stomach dropped. Wait, what? The ship will explode in 5 minutes. Max clutched his head. Oh, fantastic. That's so much time. I was worried we wouldn't get a chance to casually stroll back to our ship while everything around us turns into fire. Zyra ignored him, pressing one final command. The screens flickered before the ship's power grid shut down entirely, leaving them in dim emergency lighting. Relo's voice came through again, very urgently. I really hope that was you, Zyra. It was. Relo let out a breath. All right, I don't know how you just disabled an entire Syndicate flagship, but I love it. Now get back here before that thing blows. Max didn't need to be told twice. Time to go. They sprinted through the corridors, alarms blaring, the entire ship shaking from internal failures. The enemy forces were in total disarray, their weapon systems down, their defenses crumbling. Some were even fleeing, realizing the ship was doomed. Max and Zyra reached the docking bay, where the Lucky Break was waiting with the cargo ramp lowered. Relo was standing at the entrance, waving frantically. Move! 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 Zyra leapt up onto the ramp first, turning just in time to grab Max by the back of his jacket and hurl him inside as an explosion rocked the hangar. Max hit the floor with a grunt. You know, one day I'd love to board this ship without being thrown onto it. Zyra ignored him, already sealing the hatch. Relo, launch! On it! The ship roared to life, lifting off just as the Syndicate battleship suffered its final catastrophic failure. Through the viewport, they watched as the massive vessel buckled, its core rupturing, before it detonated in a spectacular explosion, sending debris scattering into space. Max, still lying on the floor, groaned. Well, that was needlessly dramatic. Relo laughed, hands steady on the controls. Hey, at least we made it out alive. Zyra exhaled, stepping back from the viewport. Her shoulders, usually tense, seemed to ease just slightly. Max sat up, still catching his breath. So, I'm assuming the Syndicate will be less inclined to chase you now? Zyra considered it. They have suffered a significant loss. They will not prioritize me anymore. Max grinned. Well, that's a relief. I was starting to think we'd have to spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Rilo smirked. You still might. You did just help take down a major Syndicate warship. Max groaned. Can't we just once do something that doesn't make more people want to kill us? Relo and Zyra exchanged glances. Then, in unison, they both said, no. Max sighed dramatically. Figures. Later, as the ship cruised through deep space, Max found Zyra standing near the viewport, watching the stars. She was silent, lost in thought. Max stepped up beside her. You okay? She hesitated. Then quietly she said, I am free. Max nodded, understanding. Feels weird, doesn't it? She looked at him. What does? Having a future, Max said, one that's yours. Zyra didn't answer immediately, but then, slowly, she nodded. Yes. Max smiled. Well, good news. The future's a lot less scary when you've got people watching your back. Zyra studied him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she smirked. You are still an idiot, Max Carter. Max placed a hand over his heart. I'll take that as a compliment. She shook her head but didn't deny it. And as they stood there, watching the stars stretch endlessly before them, Max realized something. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't running from danger anymore. Maybe he was running toward something better.